The first thing I felt was the cold. Not the kind that lives in air-conditioned rooms or autumn breezes, but the cold that settles beneath the skin, deep and patient. I tried to move. Pain bloomed across my ribs like firecrackers under flesh. There was glass on my face, in my mouth, the coppery taste of blood on my tongue. Then, a voice. "Serena," it murmured, deep and velvet-rich. I flinched. I knew that voice. Not in the way I should. Not like a memory, but like a haunting. I opened my eyes to fluorescent white above me. Hospital light. Artificial. Merciless. My breath was shallow, but it returned slowly, counting itself in trembling beats. Monitors beeped at my side. Somewhere, someone said my name again. "You're safe," he whispered. I turned my head. He was there. Tall, immaculate, dark suit, darker eyes, an air about him like winter had stepped into the room and taken human form. His presence pulled the air taut, like a violin string straining before the first note. "Do I know you?" I asked. My voice cracked. His mouth twitched into something like a smile. "You will." I tried to sit up, but the wires tugged and the pain snapped me back. He moved immediately. Not with panic. He didn't seem like the kind of man who panicked. But with quiet authority. A hand on my shoulder. The heat of him seeping into my skin. "You were in an accident," he said. "You were lucky." Lucky. That word slithered through me, sticky and wrong. Adrian? The name sliced out of me before I could stop it. His eyes didn't flinch. Gone. My heart twisted. My stomach lurched. It wasn't possible. We were just... A flash of tires. A scream. His voice yelling my name. The world turning upside down. And then darkness. I stared at this stranger. No, not a stranger. He sat too close. Watched too intently. There was ownership in his silence. "Who are you?" "Damien Orlov," he said, like it should mean something. And God help me, it did. The name hit me with the force of water breaking through a dam. Orlov. I'd heard whispers, rumors, the kind of name said behind closed doors, in accents thick with vodka and blood. "Why are you here?" My voice barely made it past my throat. He leaned closer, and the air grew denser, because I was always watching. Because the man you married played with fire, and because, Serena, he whispered my name like a promise wrapped in smoke. "I'm the only reason you're breathing." I felt the words crawl over my skin. "You saved me." He nodded once. "Yes. And now, you belong to me." I choked on a laugh, bitter and disoriented. "You don't own people." He tilted his head, studying me like something wild he might tame. "Don't I?" My body remembered things I hadn't told it. The warmth of his breath, the scent that clung to him, citrus, smoke, something darker. My pulse skipped, then stuttered. I looked away. The walls spun. He touched my wrist gently, but I flinched like he'd struck me. He froze. "I won't hurt you," he said softly. Then, after a pause, "Not unless you ask me to." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a joke. It was a truth. I stared at him, unsure whether I was afraid or intrigued, or both. And then something shifted in his gaze. Not possession, not control. Something else. I didn't know what to call it. but it terrified me more than anything else he'd said. Devotion. Rest, he said, rising slowly. His shadow swept over me. We'll talk more tomorrow. I didn't say you could stay, I whispered. He paused at the door, glanced back. I didn't ask. The door clicked behind him, and in the silence that followed, I realized the truth. My world had ended in flames. And this man, this stranger with eyes like a Russian winter, had walked out of the fire, carrying me. Whatever came next wouldn't be healing. It would be hunger.
She looked at me like I was a shadow crawling across her skin, something she didn't want to feel but couldn't quite shake off. I could see it in her eyes, still glazed from painkillers and trauma. She didn't remember everything yet. That was good. Memory was a blade. Some truths cut too deep when they came too soon. I needed her soft for now. Just for now. She didn't remember the fire, not fully, but she would. Her voice, when she said my name, had cracked open something inside me I'd sworn no one would ever touch. "Do I know you?" she had asked. And I had lied. Not with words, with silence. With the way I stood too close. The way I breathed her in. The way I didn't look away. Now she was sleeping again, curled beneath sterile sheets in a bed that smelled of antiseptic and regret. Her hands twitched sometimes. Maybe from dreams, maybe from ghosts. And I wanted to hold them still. I wanted to bury my mouth against her wrist and whisper truths she wasn't ready to hear. I had saved her. That was real. But I hadn't done it out of goodness. I'd done it because I couldn't live in a world where she didn't exist. There were moments I wondered if she knew, on some level, that I had been there that night, not at the crash, before it, in the shadows of her husband's life, watching, listening, waiting. Adrian Morozov thought he understood the rules of the underworld, but he forgot the oldest one. Some thrones are already spoken for, and Serena Volkova was mine. He just didn't know it yet, or maybe he did in the final seconds. Maybe he saw my face through the flames and realized he was nothing but a placeholder for something far more permanent. I didn't relish his death. I didn't mourn it either. He was simply necessary. Now she was here, alive, fragile, but whole enough to rebuild. I moved closer to her bed, letting the lamplight catch the curve of her cheekbone, the shape of her mouth, parted slightly as she slept. Her lips were dry. I reached for the glass of water beside her bed and placed it gently within reach. She didn't stir. Not even when my fingers brushed the side of her hand. Her skin was warm, not feverish, just alive. I exhaled slowly. "You don't have to be afraid of me," I murmured, "but I hope you are." My voice felt like smoke in the air, curling between us. She didn't hear it, not consciously, but maybe something deep inside her, something primal, felt it, felt me. There's a difference between fear and surrender. I didn't want her fear, not truly. I wanted the surrender that came after, the kind that wasn't taken, but given. One breath at a time, one night at a time. She shifted slightly. A lock of hair fell across her face, and I reached forward, brushing it back with 2 fingers. Her lashes fluttered, and for a moment I thought she would wake. She didn't. But her lips moved, barely. A whisper. My name, not a curse, not a cry, just a sound wrapped in confusion and need. Damien. I closed my eyes. She was dreaming of me. Or remembering. Either way, I would be the last face she saw before sleep and the first ghost to haunt her when she woke. That was The shape of fate. I wasn't the villain in her story. I was the storm that swallowed the plot and rewrote the ending. She'd been his. Tonight she belonged to me. Tomorrow, she would choose it. I would make sure of that. With every word, every touch, every breath.
The silence of the hospital room became a cage. Too clean, too quiet, too full of things left unsaid. I stared at the ceiling tiles as if they could give me answers. They didn't. They never would. My body was sore, but not just from the crash. There was a deeper ache, a hollowness I couldn't name. I kept expecting Adrian to walk in and laugh at the absurdity of all this, but he didn't, because he was dead, and I was still here, breathing, bleeding inside. I turned my face toward the window. Outside, the New York skyline pulsed like a distant heartbeat. I didn't belong to it anymore. Maybe I never had. I touched my stomach. Slow, tentative. Nothing showed yet, but the truth pulsed beneath my skin like a secret waiting to be heard. I hadn't told anyone. Not my brothers. Not the doctors. Certainly not Damien Orloff. Especially not him. But I knew. The way you know when rain is about to fall, even under a clear sky. The kind of knowing that isn't logical, just inevitable. The door opened, and just like that, the air shifted. I didn't have to look to know it was him. The silence bent around his presence. My body reacted before my mind caught up. That same unsettling warmth blooming in my chest and crawling down my spine. I knocked, he said softly. You didn't answer. I didn't want to. A pause. He didn't take the bait. Just walked to the edge of the bed like he owned the ground beneath it. I could hear the rustle of his coat as he moved, the heavy hush of expensive fabric. You slept well. I don't remember asking for your opinion. Another pause. Another silence charged with tension I didn't want to name. You're angry. Brilliant observation. His voice dipped lower. You should be. I finally turned my face toward him. The room felt colder with him in it, even though my skin burned. He wasn't beautiful in the way Adrian had been. Damien's face was too severe for that. Too cruel. But it was captivating, dangerous in a way that made you want to get closer just to see how far you'd fall. You think this is some twisted game? I asked. You sit there like some avenging god watching me fall apart. Waiting for what? Gratitude. No, he said, not gratitude. Then what? Recognition. The word landed like a slap. I blinked. Recognition of what? He stepped closer. The space between us crackled. That I've been here, he said, long before you noticed. That I've watched you walk into rooms, leave shadows behind you. That I've studied the way you laugh when you're nervous, or how you bite your lip when you lie. That I've memorized the color of your anger and the silence of your heartbreak. And that the man you married never really saw you. My throat tightened. I hated how his words made something inside me stutter, as if a part of me had waited to be seen, and now that it was, it didn't know what to do with the attention. You don't know me, I whispered. I know enough. I closed my eyes, trying to drown out the sound of his voice. But it was like trying to unhear a song that had already burrowed into your bones. What do you want from me, Damien? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat in the chair beside the bed, as if he had every right to be there, as if my space was his to invade. I want you to stop pretending, he said, that you're fine, that you don't wake up in the middle of the night replaying the crash, that you don't feel him dying beside you, that your silence isn't just grief, it's guilt. My heart stilled. I don't. You do, he interrupted gently. And you're not wrong. You're not innocent in this. None of us are. Tears burned behind my eyes. I blinked them back with everything I had. I wouldn't cry in front of him. Not him. I wanted to scream, to shove him out of this room, out of this world. But the weight of his gaze kept me still, rooted. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You're carrying more than sorrow, Serena. My breath caught. He knew. Of course he did. I stayed very still, trying to figure out if I was more afraid of his mind or his eyes. I haven't told anyone, I said finally, my voice a breath. Not yet. His expression didn't shift, but something softer passed behind his gaze, like a storm calming just enough to let the rain fall slow. You don't have to, he said. Not yet. I looked away, out the window again, at the skyline that didn't belong to me anymore. Why are you doing this? I asked. Why me? His answer came too quietly. Because you're mine. My body went still. My pulse pounded in my ears. But everything else, every voice, every memory, every scar, fell silent. And for one terrifying, impossible moment, I wanted to believe him.
She didn't flinch when I said it. That should have satisfied me. Should have been enough. But I didn't want her silence. I wanted the gasp, the ache, the wordless knowing that followed. I wanted her to feel my name inside her, the way it had lived in me for years, uninvited, unsought, and utterly immovable. Mine, yes, I said it. And I meant it in ways she hadn't even begun to understand. After she turned away, I let the moment stretch. I watched the line of her neck as she breathed, slow, uneven, like she was holding something back. Her shoulders were bare where the hospital gown had slipped slightly, and I had the sudden savage urge to reach out and cover her with something of mine. A jacket, a coat, my hands. Instead, I stood. The quiet between us deepened. Outside, a nurse passed by, unaware of the war inside this room. I stepped closer, slowly enough not to startle her, deliberately enough that she'd feel me approaching before she heard me. Her eyes flicked toward me once, just once. And then she looked back out the window like she hadn't, as if she wasn't listening to the sound of my breath or measuring the space between us with every beat of her heart. I spoke with your brother today, I said. The name didn't need to be spoken. Mikhail Volkova, head of the family now, loyal to the grave, and yet cautious. We'd circled each other for years, wolves, both of us, but I didn't want his territory, only what belonged to me. He said you'd been protected, I continued, watched. She didn't respond. I stepped to the foot of the bed. He didn't know how close the fire had come, I murmured. Now her gaze turned, slowly, like ice melting. I could see the flicker in her eyes, the moment she realized I wasn't here just for show, that this was no act of mercy or goodwill. You're playing a dangerous game, she said, her voice a soft lilt of defiance, almost a lullaby. I smiled faintly. Not a game, not anymore. You think because I'm alone, because I'm grieving, you can twist that into gratitude. You can make me need you. No, I said, stepping forward again. I already make you feel. She froze. There. That breath. That hesitation. It was always the small betrayals, that revealed the truth. "I don't want to feel anything," she whispered. "Liar." Her eyes flashed. She sat up, pushing the blankets aside like armor. "You don't know me. I know how your fingers curl when you lie, how you breathe faster when you're angry, but speak softer when you're truly afraid. I know what your voice sounds like when you say his name and what it doesn't sound like when you say mine." She trembled. "You watched me?" she asked. I nodded. "For how long?" "Long enough to know you never really belonged to him?" The words landed hard. I could feel the sting ripple through her, but she didn't look away. She absorbed it, let it burn, let it change her. Then she said, "If you were waiting for him to die, why save me?" I walked to the edge of her bed and leaned down, my voice low enough to settle directly against her spine. "Because I've waited too long to let you die before you ever lived." Her lips parted, but no sound came. The moment pulsed between us, alive, electric, and unbearable. I reached for her hand, slow enough to let her pull away. She didn't. "You should rest," I whispered, my fingers grazing the inside of her wrist. "Tomorrow, we begin again." "What are we beginning?" I met her gaze, and I didn't smile. "Ours."
I couldn't sleep. Not really. Not when my skin still hummed with the echo of his voice. Not when the air in this room held the weight of everything he hadn't said. Damien Orloff didn't speak in confessions. He dripped possession like honey, slow and sticky, impossible to wash off. Every word he breathed near me slid beneath my skin and stayed there, crawling through blood and bone until my own pulse forgot how to beat without his name in it. The room had gone still, but my mind wasn't quiet, not even close. I rose slowly, careful not to disturb the wires still clinging to me like restraints. The hospital gown gaped at the back, but I didn't care. I padded barefoot across the cold floor to the mirror above the sink, needing to see myself, needing proof that I was still just a woman, not someone claimed, not someone haunted. But the reflection that met me didn't feel familiar. My hair was a mess of dark waves, lips pale, collarbone more defined than I remembered. Yet the eyes, my eyes, were sharper now, more alive, or maybe just more broken. I wasn't sure I could tell the difference anymore. And then I saw it, the small scar just beneath my jaw, faint, almost elegant. I touched it, and the memory came back in a whisper. A mask, a ballroom, his hands, his mouth. My breath caught. It hadn't been Adrian. That night, that kiss. The man in black with eyes like frozen midnight. It had been him. Damien. God. I stumbled back, the counter pressing into my spine as the air left my lungs. My mind tried to deny it, but my body had known before I did. That night hadn't been a fantasy. It was the start of everything. A knock, not soft, not tentative, just enough to make my heart seize. "I'm coming in," his voice said through the door. Not a question. I didn't move. The door opened, and there he was, taller than the shadows behind him, wearing a black cashmere coat and the scent of power and storm. He shut the door behind him with slow finality, his gaze pinning me in place like I was already undone. "You're awake," he said. "I remembered," I breathed. He didn't ask what. He stepped closer. "I know." The space between us thickened. I felt it press against my chest, my thighs, my throat. He moved with the calm of a man who knew he was already beneath your skin and had no need to rush. "You kissed me," I said, barely louder than a thought. He nodded once. "You let me." I should have slapped him. I should have screamed. But instead I asked, "Why didn't you say anything?" His eyes darkened. "Because it was the one thing I ever took without asking." My breath hitched. "You shouldn't be here." "And yet," he murmured, taking another step, "you haven't told me to leave." My back brushed the edge of the sink, the porcelain unforgiving, my body suddenly too aware of itself. I hated him for how close he was, for how good it felt. His hand rose, fingers grazing my jaw. That night was mine. You were mine. Even then. You were wearing a mask. He leaned in, voice brushing my lips. So were you. The world slowed. His fingers tilted my chin up, not rough but firm, like he knew I needed the pressure. I should have turned away, but my knees weakened instead. My pulse betrayed me. "You want the truth, Serena?" he whispered. "You want to know what I felt that night?" "No. Yes." His thumb brushed the corner of my mouth, and I shivered. I felt like a man being handed a taste of heaven, knowing I'd burn for it. And still, I opened my mouth. I made a sound, small and helpless, and hated it. But he didn't mock me. He just stepped closer, chest to chest now, heat bleeding through the gown between us. "You haven't changed," he murmured. "Still fire beneath all that frost." I pressed my hands to his chest, meaning to push, meaning to fight. But his heart beat steady under my palms, and mine wasn't. "Damien," I breathed. And that was the mistake, because he leaned in, not quite kissing me, just close enough that I felt his breath on my lips, the ghost of a touch. "You remember now," he said. "So tell me, do you regret it?" My voice was a tremor. "I don't know." His lips brushed my jaw. "Then let me remind you." But he didn't kiss me. Not yet. He just stood there, holding the moment between us like a blade. And I, fool, woman, flame, let him.
She didn't pull away. Not when I stepped into the heat of her breath, not when her hand stayed frozen against my chest, not even when her lips parted like she was already surrendering the next word, the next breath, the next battle. I could feel her trembling, but it wasn't fear. No, this was something far sweeter. Resistance dissolving, resentment unraveling, and underneath it all, the ache of recognition. She knew me now. Not by name, not by legend, but by skin. By the ghost of a memory pressed between her thighs, sealed in the darkness of a night neither of us had truly forgotten. "I waited for this," I murmured, my lips brushing the air between us. Longer than I care to admit. Her voice came low and raw. "You shouldn't have." "I did." She tried to look away, but I caught her chin gently, guiding her gaze back to mine. No force. Just presence. Just the gravity between us pulling everything tight. "You're not the man I thought I saw that night," she whispered. "No," I said. "I'm worse." Her breath caught, her lashes trembled, but she didn't step back. I could feel the war behind her eyes, the instinct to run crashing against the need to stay. It was exquisite, that moment just before surrender. The inhale, the hesitation, the raw, unspeakable want. I should hate you, she said. Then hate me, I replied. But feel it. My hand slid down her arm, slow enough to be a question. Her skin warmed beneath my touch. Her fingers curled against my shirt like she wanted to hold something steady, and couldn't decide if it should be me or herself. You're dangerous, she breathed. I smiled. Only to those who lie to themselves. And then I leaned in, not to steal, but to ask. My lips hovered just above hers, not touching, just enough for her to feel the heat of the choice she still had. I waited, 1 heartbeat, 2, and then, with a breath that sounded like a secret, she closed the distance. The kiss was soft at first, but laced with something volatile, a hunger sharpened by months of silence, of pretense, of sleeping beside a man who never truly reached her. She kissed me like she needed proof of something, of herself, of this, of the way I'd looked at her when she didn't know who I was. Her fingers curled at the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and I let her take control for a moment, but then I deepened it. And everything changed. My hands found her hips, grounding her to the world we were no longer pretending didn't exist. Her body responded instinctively, pressing closer, chasing friction, chasing answers. There was no room between us anymore, only pulse and heat and breath. When I pulled back barely, her lips were swollen, her eyes unfocused, and her hands trembled where they still clung to me. Tell me to stop, I whispered against her mouth. She didn't. So I pressed a kiss to her jaw, then lower, letting my lips drag across the curve of her throat, savoring the way her breath stuttered in my ear. Her hospital gown had slipped further, baring her shoulder, her collarbone. I touched her there, lightly, reverently. I remember everything, she said suddenly, her voice barely a thread. That night, the mask, your hands. I closed my eyes, the confession tightening something inside me I didn't have words for. I wanted you then, she said. I wanted to forget everything else. I let that truth settle between us. A truth I'd held like a dagger against my chest for far too long. You didn't forget, I said. No. And she didn't regret it either. I could see it in her eyes, the fire, the ache, the knowledge that this, whatever we were now, was inevitable. But just as I reached to gather her fully into me, there was a knock at the door, sharp, jarring, unforgivable. Her breath hitched. Her gaze broke. And just like that, the moment shattered into pieces too delicate to hold.
The knock shattered us. I blinked as if waking from a dream I hadn't realized I'd entered, one where time dissolved, where breath and touch were the only language left. I stepped back slowly, the air between us colder now, and yet my skin still burned where his mouth had touched me. He didn't move at first, just watched me, gaze unreadable, but full, heavy. I could still taste him on my lips, like sin sweetened with memory. The knock came again, louder, impatient. I need to get that, he said, his voice lower now, strained around the edges. I nodded, but my body swayed slightly without his nearness, and I hated that. Hated how quickly my center had shifted, how quickly he had become gravity. When he stepped out of the room, I turned back to the mirror. My reflection told the story before I could. My cheeks flushed, pupils dark, lips kissed raw. The straps of the gown had fallen down again, exposing the soft slope of my shoulders. I didn't fix them. I couldn't. My fingertips grazed the side of my neck, where his lips had lingered, and I felt it again. That night. The mask, the piano, his hands. My body had remembered before my mind dared to. And now, the truth moved through me like wildfire. reckless, consuming, irreversible. The door clicked. He returned, eyes sharper now, mouth drawn into something colder. "What is it?" I asked, heart tightening. "There's something I need to show you," he said, "about Adrian." I stiffened at the name. Damien crossed the room and handed me a file. Thick, marked. I stared at it, not wanting to touch it, not wanting to hold something that might change the shape of the last years of my life. "You already broke me," I said softly. "What's left?" His gaze softened barely. "The truth." I opened it with trembling hands. Photos, documents, surveillance. My husband meeting men I didn't know, receiving payments, and something more. A signature I recognized, one that didn't belong to any business deal. Military-grade encryption. Stolen intel. I covered my mouth with one hand, bile rising in my throat. He was selling information. Damien nodded once. "To men who wanted your family dead. And you, if necessary." My knees buckled. I sat on the edge of the bed, cold rushing into me from all sides. "And you let me marry him," I whispered. His voice sharpened. "I didn't let you do anything." But I wasn't going to interfere, not until he crossed the line. I looked up. And when was that? When he touched you. Something shattered inside me, not because of the betrayal, because of how much I wanted to believe him, how much I wanted to take the hurt and fold it into his hands like an offering. You wanted him dead. He didn't deny it. "I wanted you," he said. The words dropped between us, heavier than before. I rose, slowly. My body moved like it belonged to someone else. But my voice was mine. "So you watched me," I said. "Watched me sleep beside a man who lied to me. Let him touch me, kiss me, pretend to love me. And you said nothing." He stepped closer, "Because I needed you to see it. For yourself. And what am I supposed to do with all this truth now?" My voice cracked. Wrap it around me like armor? Or let it bury me? His hand cupped my face gently, thumb brushing a tear I hadn't felt fall. "Let it make you new." I closed my eyes, leaning into his touch before I could stop myself. I wanted it to be wrong, needed it to feel like a betrayal, but his warmth, it felt like shelter, the kind I hadn't known in years. "I hate you," I whispered. "No," he said, his voice a breath against my lips. "You hate that you don't." And then he kissed me again, this time with no pretense, no mask, no control, just need, just the unbearable truth of two people who had lost everything, except each other.
She didn't run. Not when the weight of the truth threatened to drown her, not when I kissed her like a man who'd bled for the chance. Her lips met mine not in surrender, but in fury, in ache. In the raw electricity of a heart cracking open, she tasted like defiance, like grief, like something forbidden I would claim again and again, even if it destroyed us both. My hands framed her face, but it wasn't enough. I needed to feel her everywhere, to know she was real, alive, here, with me. I broke the kiss only long enough to look at her, and the sight nearly brought me to my knees. Her breath was shallow, her eyes full of storm, her body trembling, not with fear, but with the kind of anticipation that bordered on pain. I spoke low, just enough for her to feel the words against her mouth. "Say you want this." She didn't speak. She moved. Her fingers slid into my coat, gripping my shirt, pulling me closer, like she wanted to climb inside my skin and disappear there. That was answer enough. I kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, letting her set the rhythm, letting her feel the control she still thought she had. Her body fit against mine, like it had always been meant to. Her warmth soaked through every layer, branding me in places no one could see. When I lifted her slightly and sat on the edge of the bed, drawing her into my lap, she didn't resist. She wrapped her legs around me, her hospital gown slipping further, revealing the bare line of her spine, the curve of her thigh. I gritted my teeth, not from restraint, but reverence. This wasn't possession. This wasn't conquest. This was gravity, undeniable, unstoppable, absolute. She cupped my jaw with both hands and looked at me as if she were seeing the man beneath the monster. I couldn't remember the last time anyone had done that, if ever. Her voice came out hoarse, like it scraped something deep inside her to speak it. Why me? I closed my eyes for half a breath. Because you saw me. Even when you didn't know my name, you looked at me like I wasn't made of ash. Her thumb brushed my bottom lip. And if I burn, then I'll burn with you. Her mouth claimed mine again, and this time something broke. Something fragile and final. My hands slid beneath the gown, tracing the outline of her ribs, the softness of her waist. Every breath she took deepened the tension, stretched it until it became a living thing between us. I kissed the corner of her mouth, her jaw, the hollow of her throat. Her pulse fluttered there like wings. "Damien," she whispered. And it sounded like forgiveness wrapped in fire. I could have fallen to my knees for that sound. But I didn't. I held her closer, anchoring her to me with every breath, every brush of skin. "Tell me to stop," I said again, one last time. Her reply came like silk over steel. "Don't you dare." And so I didn't. I kissed her shoulder, her collarbone, the edge of a scar I hadn't seen before. My lips followed it slowly, reverently, and I felt her shudder against me, her fingers tangled in my hair, her breath coming faster now, every sound she made like a confession against my ear. I spoke between kisses, soft and certain. "You were never his." Another kiss. "You were never safe." My hands cradled her hips, grounding her to the present. "But with me, you'll never be invisible again." She pulled back just slightly, just enough to look at me through lashes heavy with heat. Her voice trembled, but not from fear. "You ruin everything." I smiled, slow and unapologetic. "Only things not built to last." And then she kissed me again, hungry, claiming, desperate. And this time I let her take me with her. Let her break me open. Let her burn me alive. Because in her fire, I found something I never thought I'd touch again. Not peace, not redemption, but something far more dangerous. Hope.
I shouldn't have let it happen. I should have pulled away when his lips whispered against my skin, when his voice turned to silk and sin. I should have remembered the blood between us, the betrayal curled in his name. But my body didn't care. My soul didn't argue. It felt like falling and being caught at the same time, like drowning in fire and breathing in ice. There was no line anymore, no right, no wrong, just him, his hands, my breath tangled in his mouth, the way he looked at me like I was the last beautiful thing left in a world made of ash. And when he touched me, God, when he touched me, it wasn't rough or possessive. Not then. It was reverent, worshipful, like he was memorizing every inch of me in case I slipped through his fingers. I didn't mean to moan his name. I didn't mean to cling. But his mouth found places I'd forgotten existed. His touch wasn't demanding. It was deliberate, slow, intoxicating, like he wanted me to feel every second, every ache, every ounce of restraint slipping away. But now the silence was louder than the storm we'd created. The room was dim again, the night stretching long and breathless. I sat at the edge of the bed, wrapped in one of his shirts, the fabric soft against skin that still tingled from him. My heartbeat hadn't calmed. My body still buzzed, too alive, too aware. And he stood by the window, shirtless, shadows casting over the ridges of his back, like a painting too raw to be displayed. He hadn't spoken since. Neither had I, because words felt too fragile for what we'd done, for what it meant. I watched him from behind, the way tension rippled beneath his skin, the way his jaw clenched as if he was fighting with himself, and I hated that I didn't know if it was guilt or control. "Damien," I said, voice barely a thread. He didn't turn. "You should be asleep." "So should you." He exhaled, slow, rough. "If I close my eyes, I'll see you. And that's a bad thing. It's dangerous." I stood, the hem of his shirt brushing my thighs, and crossed the room without a sound. I stopped just behind him, close enough to feel the heat radiating off him, not touching yet. My voice was soft, but steady. "Tell me what you're thinking." He turned then slowly, and when our eyes met, I felt something inside me stutter. Not fear, not even desire, something deeper, older, like two storms recognizing each other across a broken sea. "I'm thinking," he said, "that if I let myself love you, I'll never let you go." The words hit like a pulse through my bones. "I'm not asking you to love me," I whispered. He stepped closer, eyes dark, unreadable. "No, you're not, but you already do." His jaw tightened. "And that terrifies you more than anything else." He didn't deny it. He reached out slowly, brushing his fingers over my cheek. "You make me weak, Serena." I leaned into his touch. "No, I make you real." He closed his eyes, like my words were a wound. Then suddenly, his hands gripped my waist and pulled me to him. His mouth hovered over mine, not kissing, just breathing me in. The tension between us sparked again, alive, dangerous, intimate. Every nerve in my body stood at attention. "If you stay," he whispered, "there's no turning back." I didn't flinch. I didn't run. "I'm already gone." And when he kissed me again, it wasn't gentle. It was fire. It was promise. It was everything we hadn't said, but always knew.
She fell asleep against my chest, her breath warm on my skin. One hand curled possessively around my side like I might disappear if she let go. The rhythm of her breathing anchored me, pulled me back from places darker than she'd ever seen. I kept my eyes on the ceiling, watching shadows dance across it as the city hummed below us. But all I could feel was her. All I could hear was the echo of her voice when she whispered, "I'm already gone." I didn't deserve that kind of surrender. I hadn't earned it. And yet here she was, wrapped in my shirt, in my bed, in my world. And she wasn't trying to escape. Not anymore. She was still present, mine. My fingers traced the delicate curve of her back, light enough not to wake her, but firm enough that I could feel the truth of her. She wasn't fragile. She wasn't breakable. She was fire held in human form, and I had the scorch marks to prove it. I should have left her sleeping, Let her rest. Let the night hold us without question. But I couldn't. Not when every part of me screamed to keep her close. Not when the past I buried was clawing its way to the surface. So I shifted slowly, careful not to disturb her, and stood. The air felt colder without her body against mine. I moved through the penthouse like a man possessed, barefoot, bare-chested, still marked by her nails, by her size, by the memory of her body arching beneath mine. The security panel near the bar lit up with my approach. I typed in a code she hadn't seen yet, one that opened the doors to the parts of me I never shared. The vault clicked open. Inside, steel, silence, shadows, and something more. I stared at the safe at the back, the one only I could open, my fingerprints, my secrets. I pressed my hand to the sensor, and the door released with a soft hiss. Inside lay the chip. The reason Adrian died. The reason Serena almost followed him. It looked like nothing, just a sliver of metal and glass. But it held the power to burn entire empires to the ground. And I'd kept it. Not because I wanted to use it, but because I didn't trust anyone else not to. Behind me, I heard a soft sound, bare feet on marble. I turned slowly. She stood in the doorway, wrapped in the sheet, hair falling wild around her face, eyes wide but not afraid. "What is that?" she asked. My voice came low. "A key. To everything." She stepped closer, silent as a thought, and stopped beside me. Her gaze never left the chip. "It's what he died for." "Yes." "And what I almost died for." I nodded. She looked up at me, and there was no softness in her eyes this time, only clarity. "Why keep it?" "Because power like this doesn't vanish. It waits, it chooses the wrong hands. I'd rather it rot in mine than become a weapon in someone else's." She was quiet for a moment, then, "But what about us? What about us? If you're still holding on to this, are you really letting me in?" I blinked. Her words sliced deeper than I expected, because I didn't know how to answer. She reached out and touched the chip, then looked back at me. "You don't need this to control the world, Damien. You already do." And with that, she turned and walked back toward the bedroom, slow, graceful, commanding. She didn't look back. She didn't need to, because she knew I would follow.
The hallway was silent, but my pulse wasn't. It echoed in my ears, fast and loud and reckless. I walked back to his room, barefoot, wrapped in the thin linen he tangled around me, my skin still warm from his hands, my lips still swollen from his mouth. I didn't look behind me. I didn't need to. I knew he would come. I could feel him already, his presence pressing against my back like a shadow made of heat and hunger. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the silence settle. The city whispered outside, distant sirens, the hum of streetlights, the slow beat of a world that didn't know I had changed, that I wasn't that woman anymore, the one who had smiled politely, obeyed, kept her head down. That woman was buried in the ash of a marriage built on lies. I felt him before I heard him. His steps were soft, careful, but his presence filled the room like a storm. I didn't turn. I couldn't. Because if I looked at him, I might forget how much this cost me. I might beg him to take it all again. He came to stand behind me, not touching, but close. So close. "You didn't answer my question," I said softly. I didn't know how. I turned my head slightly. "Then lie to me." Just for once. Make it easier. He stepped closer, his fingers brushing the back of my neck. The gentlest touch, the most dangerous. I don't lie to you. Then why do I still feel like a secret? His breath caught. There it was. I stood slowly and turned to face him. His eyes searched mine, not with suspicion, but with something rawer. Guilt, desire, the ache of a man trying to hold a world together with bloodied hands. I saw the chip, I whispered, but that wasn't the real secret, was it? He said nothing. I saw the way you looked at it. Not with fear, not even control. You looked at it like it gave you purpose. He reached for me then, but I stepped back, not far, just enough. I'm not here to be your redemption, Damien. I'm not here to be saved. His jaw clenched. You think that's what this is? I think, I breathed, stepping back into his space, letting our bodies almost touch. You're still afraid I'll disappear if you let go. His eyes closed briefly, and when they opened again, they were softer, broken, beautiful. You don't understand, he said. Then help me. He took my hand, slowly, reverently, and pressed it flat to his chest. His heartbeat was steady, strong, but I could feel the tremble beneath it. I've never had anything, he said. Not really. Not without paying for it in blood. My fingers curled slightly, feeling the warmth of him, the weight of all the things he never spoke. You're not nothing, I whispered, but you will lose me if you keep trying to protect me from myself. He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time, I saw the boy beneath the king, the ache beneath the armor, the man who had stood in fire and walked out burning. He didn't kiss me this time. He just held me, arms around my back, face buried in my neck, like he needed to breathe me in to remember what it meant to live. And I let him, because I knew the war wasn't over. But in that moment, we were still. And that, God help me, was almost enough.
She didn't flinch when I held her. She didn't pull away. She let me anchor myself in the curve of her neck, let my arms wrap around her like they belonged there, like they had always known how to hold her. Her scent was soft and warm, like sleep and skin and something distinctly her, and I breathed it in like it was the only air I trusted. I hadn't meant to fall into her, not like that, not so quietly, not so completely. But the truth was in my body, in the way it curved toward hers like instinct, like need. I hadn't needed anything in years. But her? She undid me with a look, and I hadn't even realized I was coming apart until it was too late to put myself back together. I didn't know it would feel like this, I murmured against her skin. Her hands moved up my back, slow, grounding, like she already knew the weight I carried and wasn't afraid to hold it. Like what? Like being seen, and not punished for it. She didn't speak. She just pressed her lips to the side of my neck, and I closed my eyes. The world outside this room didn't matter. The chip, the war, the ghosts. For a few stolen hours, it was only us. No titles, no secrets, no sins. Until the world bled back in. The noise came like a ripple, a subtle change in pressure, a whisper from the hallway that wasn't hers or mine. I felt her body tense first. I lifted my head slowly. Stillness sharpened into awareness, a creak, a breath, a presence that didn't belong. I stepped away from her, instantly alert. my hand already reaching for the drawer beside the bed where I kept the steel. She watched me, eyes wide but steady. "Stay here," I said. She nodded once, wrapping the sheet tighter around her like armor. I moved into the hallway, silent, bare feet gliding across cold marble. I didn't call out. I didn't ask who was there. I already knew. I could feel it. Threat coiled in the dark, deliberate and cruel. Then I saw them, two shadows near the service elevator, dressed in black. Moving wrong. Too fast, too smooth. Yakuza. They'd breached the building. The first reached for his weapon. I didn't hesitate. Gun drawn, I fired once. Clean, centered, between the eyes. The second lunged, blade in hand, slicing toward my side. I dodged, caught his wrist, twisted, heard the crack of bone, heard his scream. I didn't stop. I slammed him into the wall with the force of a man protecting something more sacred than his own life. I pressed the muzzle to his throat. "Who sent you?" I asked, my voice low. Death wrapped in silk. He spat blood, laughed. "She's the weakness. You'll die for her." I didn't hesitate. I pulled the trigger. When it was over, I stood over both bodies, chest rising and falling, hands steady, mind already calculating the breach. My men would clean it. The cameras would be wiped. But none of that mattered, not really. Only one thing mattered now. I turned and saw her in the doorway, barefoot, wide-eyed, the sheet slipping from her shoulder, exposing skin that still wore my touch. Blood was on my hands, on the floor, on the wall behind me, and she saw all of it. She didn't scream. But something shifted in her eyes, something deep. I crossed the space between us slowly. "You shouldn't have seen that," I said. "But I did." Her voice was calm, too calm. I reached for her hand. She let me. "You killed them?" "Yes." "For me." "For us." She looked down at the blood on my skin, then up at my face. "You're not afraid of what I'll think of you?" "No." "Why?" "Because whatever you think, you'll still come back to me." Her breath hitched. I stepped closer, brushing my knuckles down her arm. "You're not afraid of the darkness, Serena. You've just been waiting for someone who knew how to walk through it with you." And when I pulled her into me, she came without resistance. She didn't ask me to explain it. She didn't beg me to stop. She just pressed her lips to mine with the kind of kiss that didn't care about blood or death or consequence. Only truth. Only now. Only us.
The blood didn't scare me. I thought it would. I thought seeing him like that, unflinching, lethal, quiet in his violence, would rip something inside me wide open. But it didn't. It just made the truth louder. Damien didn't belong to the world I came from. He never had. He belonged to the dark, and I was finally beginning to understand that I did too. My world had always been painted in shades of silence, of obedience, of pretending. But he never asked me to pretend. Not once. He just looked at me like I was real, even when I didn't want to be, even when it hurt. He hadn't let go of my hand since the bodies fell. He didn't speak, and neither did I. There was something sacred in the silence, like the air between us had turned holy, heavy with blood and breath and whatever this was becoming. We stood there, two ghosts in a corridor built on power and sin, and I couldn't tell who was more dangerous, him or the woman I was becoming beside him. When he finally pulled me back into the bedroom, it wasn't out of urgency. It was out of need. Slow, certain, and absolutely deliberate. He shut the door behind us like closing off the rest of the world. like nothing outside that room mattered anymore. I sat on the bed, legs curled beneath me, watching him peel off the bloodied shirt, revealing skin I already knew too well. The muscles flexed along his back, tension still coiled tight in every movement. He didn't look at me at first. He just stood there, back to me, breathing like he was trying to hold something in. "You're too calm," he said finally, voice thick. "I'm not." "Then what are you?" I swallowed. "Changed." He turned, slowly, eyes dark, studying me like he didn't know whether to run or fall to his knees. "You saw me kill. I saw you protect." He stepped closer. "You should hate me for it." I think I should hate myself more for how it made me feel. His breath caught. Just a flicker, but I saw it, felt it. "You're not afraid of me," he said. "No," I whispered, "but I'm afraid of how much I'm not." His hand reached for my face, cupping it with devastating gentleness, like I was something he never thought he'd be allowed to touch. My eyes fluttered shut, and just like that, everything else faded. The blood, the bodies, the past, the guilt. None of it could survive the gravity of his touch. "I've been alone in this fight for a long time," he murmured, his thumb brushing the edge of my jaw. "I didn't think anyone could stand beside me and survive it." "I'm not here to survive you, Damien." My fingers found his wrist, anchored myself there. "I'm here to ruin you in return." His mouth crashed into mine, but it wasn't desperation. It was revelation, a claiming, a surrender. Our bodies folded into each other like they'd been carved from the same flame. The kiss turned deeper, darker, until my knees weakened, until my thoughts scattered like ashes at our feet. He lifted me, arms sure and strong, and laid me down with care that made my heart ache. He hovered above me, eyes searching, hands holding steady. "This isn't redemption," he whispered. "I don't want redemption," I breathed. "I want you." And that was the moment the last of our walls crumbled. What we had wasn't gentle. It was elemental. It was thunder and tide and breath, stolen in gasps against skin, that didn't know where one began and the other ended. Every movement was slow, hungry, meant. His hands read me like a language he'd always known but never spoken out loud. My body answered like it had waited years to be touched this way, fully, fiercely, with no apology. And when I cried his name into the dark, it wasn't just want. It was acceptance. It was the sound of a woman finally choosing the fire instead of running from it, and finding, to her shock, that it felt like home.
She fell asleep with her head on my chest, her fingers tangled in the chain around my neck, like even in sleep she refused to let go. And I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just held her, memorizing the shape of her breath, the weight of her warmth, the wild silence she brought with her. I'd never shared a bed like this. Not truly, not without calculation. But this wasn't strategy. This wasn't conquest. This was surrender in its purest form, hers and maybe, terrifyingly, mine too. I watched the sky turn gray through the sliver of window, the city beyond it still humming with secrets I no longer cared about. My kingdom had shifted. My power was no longer forged only in blood. It now lived in the space between her breaths, in the way she whispered my name without fear, in the way she reached for me in the dark. But I knew peace couldn't last. Not for men like me. Not for women like her. Not in a world built to burn us alive. I slipped out of bed carefully, tucking the sheet around her, just to watch her stir and reach for the place I'd left. That ache, her instinct to find me even in sleep, did something violent to my chest. I brushed my fingers over her hair once, then stepped away before I changed my mind. I needed air. I needed control. I needed to remember who I was before she peeled me open with a single look. Downstairs, the penthouse was dark, empty. My world untouched by her softness. But even here I felt her. In the way the silence wasn't sharp anymore, in the way the cold didn't settle the same. She had stained this place with something dangerous, hope. I poured a drink I didn't want. Let the scotch burn its way down my throat like punishment, like proof that I could still feel something other than her skin. And then the past returned, uninvited. Her voice. Not Serena's. My mother's. Russian lullabies laced with sorrow, broken off with screams I was too young to understand. I'd buried that sound beneath empire and violence and years of silence. But it returned now, clearer than it should have, as if love had loosened the lock I'd bolted tight across my memories. I sat in the armchair near the fire, the heat doing nothing to thaw the cold in my chest. She doesn't know, I thought. She doesn't know what you've done, what you've buried, what you've promised to avenge, but she will, and when she does, she'll either run or stay and become just as damned. Damien, her voice pulled me from the memory like a hand gripping my collar. I looked up. She stood in the doorway, in nothing but my shirt, eyes sleepy, hair a mess of temptation. She looked like she belonged there, like she had always belonged there. And it undid me in a way bullets never had. You left. I swallowed. I needed time. She walked toward me slowly, barefoot on polished wood, that same quiet grace she carried into every room. She stopped in front of me and didn't say anything else. Just looked. You're bleeding, she said, reaching for my forearm where the glass had cut earlier. I didn't feel it. You feel everything, Damien. That's the problem. Her words landed sharper than the wound. She knelt in front of me and took my hand. Her fingers traced the cut gently, and then she looked up at me with something fierce in her eyes. You don't have to break yourself apart to keep me safe. I don't know how else to love, I confessed, the words falling before I could catch them. Her mouth parted, soft with surprise, and she leaned in slowly, pressing her lips to my wrist like a promise. Then let me teach you. And in that moment, with nothing between us but scars and breath and fire, I wanted to learn.
The moment his lips touched my wrist, something inside me unraveled. Not from fear, not even from tenderness, but from recognition. It was the gentlest he had ever touched me. And somehow, it was the most intimate. I felt it in my chest, in my spine, in the places of me still learning how to soften in his presence. His eyes were storm dark, but when they lifted to meet mine, I didn't see violence. I saw hunger, devotion, something sacred, and it terrified me. Not because I didn't want it, but because I did. I slid into his lap without a word, my legs straddling his, the firelight casting gold across his skin. He didn't stop me. His hands found my hips with a reverence that made my breath stutter. I held his face in both palms, brushed my thumbs across the roughness of his jaw. He leaned into my touch like a man starving for something that had nothing to do with flesh, and everything to do with the way I looked at him. Like he wasn't a monster. Like I wasn't afraid. I don't want to fix you, I whispered. I wouldn't let you, he murmured back. I just want you. All the broken parts, all the brutal ones, but you have to let me see them." He nodded once, like he couldn't trust himself to speak. Then his hands slid beneath the shirt I wore, his shirt, and I felt every inch of his control tremble. My breath hitched. My body arched. His fingers traced the curve of my stomach slowly, reverently, and stopped just beneath my ribs. "You're carrying part of me," he said, "even if you never meant to." "I know. And it changes everything." "Yes." The way he looked at me then, no man had ever looked at me like that, like I was a cathedral, and he was both the worshipper and the sinner who would burn it down just to feel something holy. His mouth found mine again, but this time it wasn't fire. It was prayer. A slow, aching kiss that pulled tears to the back of my throat. I sank into it, let it swallow the silence between us. My fingers slid into his hair, and I held him there, needing it, needing him, needing this feeling of not being alone in the world anymore. "I was afraid," I said between kisses, "that you'd take me and forget me, that I'd become just another scar." He pulled back just enough to speak. "You're not a scar, Serena. You're the wound I chose not to heal. And God, the way that broke me." My lips found his throat, the curve of his shoulder, the place where tension lived in his muscles like old rage. I kissed it all. I marked him in silence, not with bruises or teeth, but with presence, with the truth of what we were building in the quiet between violence. His hands gripped my thighs, held me there, steady and sure. And when I looked at him again, he didn't ask for permission. He just gave me the space to offer it. And I did. Not with words, with my body, with every inch of me pressing closer, melting into him, saying yes in a language older than sound. His mouth moved to my chest, my collarbone, the slope of my shoulder, each kiss a vow I didn't know I needed. And I whispered to him, not just his name, but pieces of my heart I'd never spoken aloud. The grief, the guilt, the quiet shame of surviving when I hadn't wanted to. He took it all, and gave me something unspoken in return, a place to belong, inside him, beside him, with him. And when our bodies finally moved in sync, slow and aching and unbearably real, it wasn't about need. It was about remembering that we were alive, that we had survived the wreckage, that this, whatever it was ours now, unwritten, untamed, and terrifyingly possible. I cried his name into the dark, not as a cry for help, but as a declaration, because for the first time, it felt like mine too.
I watched her sleep for hours. Her body curled toward mine, her hand resting against my chest like it had always known its place there. The room had gone quiet but not empty. Her presence filled every breath I took, every shift in the air, every space that used to ache with absence. I'd held women before, I'd touched, I'd taken. But never like this, never with the sensation that I'd been claimed in return. She didn't just lie next to me. She anchored me without trying, without knowing. And that terrified me more than any bullet ever had. I slid out of bed without waking her, moved through the darkness with muscle memory carved from decades of war. My bare feet touched cold floor, but the heat of her still clung to my skin. I went to the study, past the shelves of leather-bound silence, and opened the safe with fingers that hesitated longer than they should have. The chip lay inside, small, inert, quiet. But it pulsed with the weight of everything I'd built, everything I'd destroyed. And suddenly it didn't feel like power. It felt like a tether to a man I no longer wanted to be. I closed the safe, locked it, and turned toward the fire instead. My reflection in the glass flickered. Sharp eyes, hollow jaw. And behind it, the faintest trace of her warmth still pressed into my skin. What would she think if she knew what I'd done to protect her? What I was still capable of doing if it meant keeping her in my arms for one more night? The door creaked open. She stood there wrapped in one of my shirts again, sleep in her eyes, but something sharper in her silence. "You left," she said, voice still thick with dreams. I couldn't sleep. She stepped closer, slow, quiet, until her bare feet touched the rug by the fire. Did it feel too real? I looked at her. At the light and the dark inside her. At the woman who had made me remember my name wasn't just a warning, it was a vow. Yes. She reached out and touched my hand, sliding her fingers between mine. "Tell me what you're thinking," she said. I didn't know how. But I tried. "I've killed men for less than what I feel for you." She didn't flinch. "I know. And if you ever left me..." "I won't. You could. I could destroy you faster by staying," she said, stepping in until our bodies touched. "And I'm still here." I looked at her mouth. The mouth that had whispered my name like a secret and a scream. I looked at her throat where her pulse beat like truth. I looked at her eyes, and I wanted to believe her. "What if I can't keep you safe?" I whispered. She leaned in, brushing her lips against my jaw. "Then bleed with me," she murmured. I pulled her closer, buried my face in her neck. Her arms wrapped around me like a prayer spoken in the dark. And for the first time in years, I didn't think about survival. I just held her. Because the war wasn't over, but right now she was peace.
He held me like I was made of breath and bone and something holy, like he didn't quite believe I was real. His arms wrapped around me with a reverence that made my chest ache. His mouth pressed to the side of my neck, as if the act of holding me was its own kind of worship. And I let him. I let him breathe me in, hold me there, steady and still, while the world burned quietly outside the glass. I had never felt so safe in the arms of a man who'd done so much damage, and I had never felt more willing to be undone. But something inside me pulsed louder than comfort. The memory, the truth, and the knowing that all of this warmth, this stillness, this impossible tenderness, was balanced on a blade. I leaned back slightly, just enough to look up at him, just enough to search his face with eyes that had finally cleared. The night had left its imprint on him. I could see it in the shadows beneath his eyes, in the way his jaw tensed even in peace. He had fought too long, too hard, and now he didn't know how to rest. "I remembered something," I said quietly. He looked at me, the edge of caution flickering in his gaze. "When?" "Just now." Your voice brought it back. His arms tightened around me. "Tell me." It took everything in me not to look away. "The night of the explosion. The night Adrian died." I heard someone. His brow furrowed. "What did you hear?" "Not a scream. Not a warning. A name. Yours." He stilled. "I thought it was the panic, the confusion. But it wasn't. It was clear. You were there." He didn't speak. You said my name before the fire hit the glass. You weren't just watching from a distance, Damien. You were in the wreckage. His silence was heavier than any confession. I don't know what that means yet, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I don't know if it makes you my savior or my executioner. He stepped back, barely, his hands still on my arms, but looser now. The distance between us wasn't physical. It was truth, crawling between our ribs. I was there, he said finally, but not by accident. The words landed cold against my skin. You knew, I whispered. You knew it would happen. I tried to stop it. Did you try hard enough? I pulled you from the wreckage with my bare hands. But you let it happen. He exhaled slowly, every muscle in his body flexing like he was holding back a scream. He was going to get you killed. He was still my husband, and I never touched him while he was. The room spun. I stepped back. He didn't stop me. You waited for him to die, I said. You waited for blood to clear your path. I waited, he said, voice low, raw, because I knew if I didn't, I'd take you by force, and I swore I'd never do that. Not with you. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold. You loved me then. I loved you always. My heart cracked at the edges. So you let me break beside a man who lied to me, while you stood in the shadows and watched. He stepped closer again. Because I didn't deserve you then. And now, his hands touched my face, trembling. Now I'll burn everything I've ever built just to keep your heartbeat steady. I let the silence stretch. Then I whispered, You already did. And I didn't know if I meant it as a promise or a warning.
She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just looked at me like I was the blade and the wound. And something inside me twisted so violently I forgot how to breathe. I wanted to fall to my knees in front of her. Not to beg, not to apologize, just to be lower, just to feel what it was to kneel for something holy, because that's what she'd become to me. Not a lover, not a weakness, but the only thing I couldn't destroy. And I had tried, God, I had, in silence, in secrecy, in sins so deep they no longer shocked me, but I couldn't unmake what I was. I could only offer it. Bloody, unforgivable, true. I stepped toward her slowly, hands open, not to touch, but to surrender. She didn't move away, didn't flinch. She watched me like a storm watches the sea, knowing it's coming, knowing there's no stopping it. I don't want to be forgiven, I said. I'm not offering absolution, she whispered. I just want to know if the man I gave my body to is still in there. He never left. He just never thought he deserved to be seen. She closed her eyes just for a second, just enough to gather the strength I didn't deserve. Then she opened them and gave me the kind of look that left no air in my lungs. Then let me see him. So I did. I sank to my knees before her, not because I was weak, but because I had never shown anyone the truth of me, not like this. She looked down, her breath catching, and I pressed my forehead to her stomach, just beneath the place where our child grew. I didn't speak. I just stayed there, breathing her in, feeling her hands slowly come to rest on my head. Her fingers threaded into my hair, and for a moment, I felt human. Damien, she said softly, stand. I looked up, and what I saw in her eyes was fiercer than mercy. It was choice. So I rose, and she kissed me. Not like she was trying to take anything from me, but like she was trying to return something I'd long given up on: hope. She kissed me like I was worth loving, even after everything. Especially after everything. "I don't know how to be good," I murmured against her lips. She smiled, breathless. "Then be mine instead." And those words broke something open in me that I had buried beneath steel and blood and silence. I lifted her then, hands firm, certain. Her legs wrapped around my waist like instinct. And I carried her to the bed like she weighed nothing, like her touch was gravity and I was built to obey it. I laid her down and hovered above her, not with dominance, but with awe. She touched my face like she was learning it again. "You've never belonged to anyone," she whispered, "until now." And when I kissed her again, I didn't take. I gave. Everything.
The morning light was different. It didn't crash through the windows like an accusation. It slid in quietly, soft and gold, curling around our bodies, as if even the sun had decided to be gentle for once. I lay still for a long time, my head resting on Damien's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart beneath my cheek. It felt like safety, but not the kind I'd ever known. Not comfort, not escape. It was the kind of safety that had been earned with blood and fear and choice. The kind that held you close even when your past begged you to run. He was still asleep, or pretending to be. Either way, I didn't move. I just let myself feel it. His warmth, his weight, the way his hand curled lightly over my hip like he didn't want to hold me tight, only make sure I hadn't disappeared. I had almost disappeared once, into a marriage that made me small, into a name that erased my own, into grief that tasted like silence. But not anymore. Now I was here, with him, and I didn't regret it. Not the bruises, not the truths, not the way his name tasted on my tongue when the rest of the world fell away. I tilted my face up to look at him, and his eyes were already open, watching me like he always did, like I was the only thing that ever softened the sharpness in him. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. "You were staring," I murmured. "I was remembering." Remembering what? How I used to watch you from a distance and imagine what your skin would taste like in sunlight. My breath caught, and I felt the warmth rise beneath my skin, like heat blooming from the inside out. I touched his jaw, traced the line of his throat with my fingertips. And now that you know. He leaned in, his mouth brushing mine with the gentlest pressure. Now, I want to see it marked by more than shadow. I closed my eyes, heart pounding, body already reaching for him. But then I pulled back, not to retreat, but to stand. He watched me, confused but patient as I crossed the room. I picked up the box resting on the dresser, the one he kept closed, locked, as if afraid of what it represented. I turned toward him slowly, my breath steady. "If we do this," I said, "we do it fully. I won't live in your walls. I won't be your secret. And I won't be the woman people whisper about behind closed doors while you stand in the light." He sat up, eyes narrowing slightly, not in anger, but in understanding. "What are you asking?" I opened the box. Inside was the ring, black stone, silver band, heavy with meaning. "You said I was yours," I whispered. "Then let the world see it." He stood, came toward me with slow, deliberate steps. He didn't touch the ring. He touched me. One hand on my waist, the other on the curve of my jaw. "You'll wear my name." "No," I said. "I'll wear it beside mine." His mouth curled, not in amusement, but in something darker. Pride. "And when they come for you, they'll find me already beside the devil they fear." His eyes burned. "Marry me. Claim me. Rule with me. Always." He took the ring from the box and slid it onto my finger, not gently, but with a quiet finality that made my chest ache. And then he kissed my palm, slow and reverent, like the vow had already been made. I looked at him, this man made of ash and steel and unexpected tenderness, and I knew one thing with terrifying certainty. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the storm.
She wore red. Of course she did. Not the soft red of roses or silk, but the color of blood, of war, of women who do not flinch when power looks them in the eye. The room fell silent the moment she walked in, her hand resting lightly on my arm, the curve of her stomach barely visible beneath the tailored satin that clung to her body like a second skin. Our child, our future, our damnation, all wrapped in one impossible radiant force. I didn't look at anyone else. I didn't need to. Every man in that ballroom could see what I had already known long before tonight. She was no longer someone to be protected. She was someone to be feared. And yet, when she looked at me, just me, there was still that softness in her gaze, the one reserved for moments without witnesses, the kind that reminded me why I hadn't burned the world to the ground yet, because she was standing in it. "You're staring," she whispered, that familiar tease in her voice, the one that always made something ancient and unholy stir in my chest. "I always will," I murmured back. "Until they bury me." She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Her fingers slid down my arm, leaving a trail of warmth no silk could mimic. "Then let them see. Let them know." So I did. I kissed her. Right there, in front of them all. Not a chaste kiss, not a political gesture, a claim, a promise, a warning. She leaned into it, slow and sure, her fingers curling into the lapel of my jacket like she owned me. And God, she did. When we pulled apart, the room had shifted. They would whisper. They would spin rumors. They would weigh their options. But none of it would matter. Because she had walked into my world not to be saved, but to take her place beside me. And they knew it now. She stood taller than any crown could make her, chin lifted, lips still stained with mine. "I was never meant to be quiet," she said softly, "just for me." "No," I replied, watching her eyes ignite. "You were meant to reign." And reign she would, not behind me, not beneath me, but beside me, barefoot in blood, cloaked in fury, heart full of fire, my queen, my ruin, my resurrection.
The garden is quiet, but alive. The kind of silence that breathes, that hums beneath your skin and pulses through the earth, like a secret language only the heart understands. I sit barefoot on the stone bench, morning light spilling across my thighs, warm and soft, and the world feels impossibly distant from what it used to be. There's dew in the grass. The scent of roses clings to the air like memory, and somewhere behind me, the man who once ruled the shadows now watches the sun rise with gentler eyes. But I don't look back yet. I'm watching something else, someone else. He runs across the lawn like he owns it. Dark curls, bare feet, laughter loud and free. Our son. Ours. He moves like he's never known fear, like the world is always opened for him instead of closing in. And maybe, in a way, it has. Because we burned the monsters. We rewrote the rules. And now he walks in the ashes without knowing what it cost. Damien is behind me. I feel him before I hear him. Always. His presence settles against my spine like a whisper, like breath. I don't turn. I don't need to. He has your fire, I say. He steps closer. His hand brushes my shoulder, then slides down, anchoring at my waist. He has your light. I lean into him, let the weight of his body press into mine, just enough to remind me we are still flesh and not just myth. His lips graze the top of my shoulder, and the silence becomes something reverent. Do you miss it? I ask. The war, the empire, the fear. He exhales through his nose, slow, deliberate. Some days. But not like I miss this. I tilt my head to look at him, and he's already watching me, eyes softened by time, and the 1,000 unspoken things that passed between us, long before our vows. There are lines around his mouth now, a faint scar at his temple, evidence that even legends bleed. Would you do it again? I ask, not because I doubt him, but because I need to hear it. His answer is a breath, a vow, a blade. For you? I'd burn twice as long, and I believe him, not because he says it, but because I've seen it, felt it, loved him through it. There are parts of me now that are only alive because he once chose to kill for them. That kind of loyalty doesn't fade. It deepens, roots itself into bone. Our son turns, notices us, and runs full speed into Damien's arms. He lifts him with ease, holding him high above the earth, and their laughter becomes the most dangerous sound I've ever heard. Joy. It's louder than the past, louder than blood, louder than everything we once were. I rise slowly, walking toward them with bare feet in the wet grass. Damien lowers him gently into my arms, and when I hold my son, I feel the weight of every choice I made crash softly into my chest. This was never supposed to be my ending, but it's the only one I would bleed for, again and again, because in a world built on ruin, I found a man who didn't save me. He let me burn, and then he stayed to watch me rise.
He's too fast now. His legs longer, his laugh louder. He doesn't fall as often as he used to, but when he does, he brushes it off like the ground was made to be conquered. I watch him from the edge of the terrace, coffee forgotten in my hand, eyes tracking every step, every twist of motion. His world is sunlight and open fields. He's never had to count exits, never learned to flinch when doors close too hard. He doesn't carry what I carry, and that's the point. Behind me, the house is quiet. Serena is somewhere inside, barefoot, humming low under her breath as she reads a book she's memorized 100 times. She doesn't sing often, not loudly, but I hear her. I always do. She's the quiet at the center of my storm, the steady pulse beneath my chaos. I used to think power was control, fear, silence. But then she walked into my life like a spark. And suddenly everything I thought I knew about fire was wrong. Our son spots me and runs toward the steps, arms wide, smile unstoppable. I put the coffee down. He's already halfway to me, shouting my name with that unfiltered joy that makes my chest feel too full, too tight. I crouch to catch him, and when his body crashes into mine, I hold him like I'll never let go. He pulls back, looks me dead in the eye. "Papa, tell me the story again." I know which one he means. He doesn't ask for dragons or heroes. He asks for her. For us. The one about the queen, I ask. He nods, curls bouncing, cheeks flushed. I sit on the steps and pull him onto my lap. He settles against me like it's the most natural thing in the world, like I wasn't once a man who didn't believe he could keep anything this soft alive. There was a woman, I begin, voice low, slow, as if I'm whispering it just for him. And she walked into a world ruled by men who mistook silence for submission. He leans closer. And she didn't flinch. She looked the devil in the eye and said, "If you want to burn me, you better be ready to kneel." He giggles. Mama says fire is her favorite color. I smile, fingers brushing through his hair. It's mine too. He looks up at me, brow scrunched, suddenly serious. Were you the devil? The question hits me deeper than I expect. I was, I say, softly, and I still am. But she made me want to build instead of destroy. His eyes shine with something I can't name yet, something still blooming. He rests his head against my chest. I think you're just Papa. And maybe that's enough. When he runs back toward the garden, yelling something about bees and battle and muddy boots, I stay seated. I watch him disappear into green and sun, and I breathe. Then I pull the letter from my pocket. The one I started writing weeks ago. Folded, unsent, unfinished. It's addressed to a daughter not yet born. If she ever arrives, I want her to know the truth. That her father was never gentle, but he loved with a brutality that bent the world. That her mother wore her crown like a blade and taught him how to kneel without losing his strength. And that power, real power, has nothing to do with fear. I unfold the paper and write the last line steady and clear. Never beg, never bow. Unless it's for love, and even then, make them bleed for it. If you've made it this far, then you didn't just listen. You felt. And that means everything. Every time you leave a like, a comment, or simply whisper, "I'm here" in the shadows of this story, you breathe life into words that were born to be heard. You remind this voice, mine, ours, that love, even the darkest kind, still echoes in the right hearts.